Hello. I've been telling you stories about my growing up years and some of the things there. And since this channel is called The Horse and I thought I ought to get back and talk about horses a little bit and some of the training and some of the things that we need and can do. I'd like to visit with you about one of the more dangerous things that happens with horses. Is I see people getting on a horse on a saddle with tennis shoes or with shoes that have a whole sole on the bottom with no heel at all. That can be a disastrous effect because if something happens that you come off of the horse, the foot very easily goes through the stirrup and you hang up. And you would think that if you hung up on the side of a horse, that a horse would turn away from you, turn his rear end away from you and his head to where he'd look. But that's not the case. The horse turns his head away from you and runs in a circle away from whichever side you happen to be on. And that can be very dangerous. There's a number of cases that people have died in those circumstances. And when I was at Rick's College, we were teaching young people to become professionals in the horse world. And so we scheduled one particular day that we had the emergency medical technicians, the EMT school there at Rick's College. The head of that department was a friend, and she came out and we had set up a number of circumstances for the students to have an actual experience. It all looked real. It all had the potential to be real. And I'm standing in front of the class introducing it, and I'm wearing a pair of green coveralls, and I'm carrying a crash helmet under my arm. And I told them that, we're going to have some circumstances today that you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to decide what you're going to do in this emergency. And I said, no, that these things are set up there to be very real, and some people's lives could be in jeopardy or their limbs or whatever. And I said, so be thoughtful about how you do it and what you do. And we had talked a little bit about a horse running away with someone and having a foot caught in a stirrup. So as the head of the EMT was telling them other things that they needed to look for, I went on out into the arena. And when the students came out of the classroom to the arena, they were all in the same building. As they came out, there's a horse standing out in the middle of the arena with a person holding it. And there's a foot of a rider hung in the stirrup laying on the ground. And they turned the horse loose and stepped away. And the horse spooked. I had not thought he would as bad as he did, because he was a nice, gentle horse. Some of the kids in the class had ridden this horse. Anyway, he ran. And he ran away from that body, turning. And of course, the kids run out there to try and stop him, to get a hold of him, because this dummy is bouncing on the ground. And then the horse was running hard enough that the dummy's head and shoulders were bouncing against the walls of the arena, against some panels that were there. It was not a pretty sight. And it took long enough for those students to gather around that horse to contain him enough that one of them got a hold of him and stopped him. And they all thought I was the one on the ground because it was the same kind of coveralls and everything. It wasn't, it was a dummy. But the panic that I saw in some of the students was interesting, because people have a tendency to panic when something goes wrong. Certainly horses can panic when something goes wrong. But the head of that dummy, that crash helmet, was buckled on really good to that stuffed coveralls, and it took some severe punishment, enough so that a person probably would not have survived in those circumstances. So, but they got it stopped and pulled out. And we had some other things set up where riders have come off, and if a rider comes off and hits the ground and is unconscious, don't move them. Go to them, make sure that their air passage is clear, but don't roll them over. Don't do anything until they become conscious or you get EMTs there, medical people that know how to move a body to pick it up while it's unconscious. Uh, but we had broken arms and we had big gashes that were fake gashes in the head and the cheek. And so that was the course of the day. And it was really a wonderful day. But I wanted to share with you that about a horse running away when someone is hung up in the stirrup. You read the old Western novels where a guy gets hung in the stirrup and gets dragged through the brush. That's real. That happens at horse shows. I've seen it happen one time. Thank goodness there were some of us there close enough at the time that we were able to catch the horse within just a few feet of him doing it and get the rider out. Sometimes the shoe will come off or the boot will come off. But that's why we wear boots that have a heel on them, so that when something goes wrong and the foot slides forward in the stirrup, the heel catches the edge of the stirrup and the foot doesn't go all the way through. It's when that heel part goes through and the toe goes up and you can get hung up in a stirrup. So just a matter of caution to take care of. But from that came an instance, reminds me of an instance when I had Smokey, and Camary and I had not been married very long. We were on the Cedar Bluff, the farm there close to Ripley, Oklahoma. And I had gotten on Smokey and gone to check my cattle and I'm headed home. Well, I've always wanted to do things maybe a little different than some, but I thought, Lee, if you were to get hurt out here, it'd be nice if your horse would take you home. And I'm wearing a pair of chaps that wouldn't hurt to slide over the grass a little bit. And so I got off of him and played with him, and I tied one rein up to the saddle horn and I kept a hold of the other rein. And I put my arm through the stirrup and I told him to go home. Well, it took me a little bit to get him to start taking steps to go. But I'm aware that if anything goes wrong, all I have to do is relax the arm and it's going to come out of the stirrup easily. So I'm in no danger really, but I'm dragging on the ground beside this horse and I'm talking to him and I'm praising him for walking. We were just walking toward the house and he had his head down and he was doing everything that I wanted him to do. Well, we came over the top of the hill and down toward the bottom of the hill is where the horse barn and the arena was. And Camary was teaching a class in the arena. I didn't even think about this problem, but some of the kids saw the horse up there and saw this body dragging on the ground beside him. They panicked. Camary panicked. They grabbed everything and they came out of the arena and they're charging up the hill and I didn't see this happen down there. They told me later how that took place, but I heard them galloping up the hill and running and I thought, man, that could spook the horse too. Anyway, I turned to where I could see them and so I stopped him and I stood up and Camary was quite put out with me for doing that. She understood why I was doing it, but she didn't like being surprised the way I had. But I had taught him to bring me home, and he would. He walked all the way, and we did a number of things like that. Now, if you're going to have that, if you're going to train a horse to pull something behind it even, don't tie hard and fast to the saddle the first time you do it. Put your rope on a log or whatever you're going to pull and pull it with your hand. You can dally half a turn around that saddle horn, but where if you turn it loose, it's going to get away because horses, their eyes set on the side of their head, they can see almost 180 degrees out of each eye. They can see back over their hip. And so you have to be real careful that you don't scare them. That's why a harness horse, they put blinkers on the thing so that the horse doesn't see what's behind them. Sometimes if they see it, they get spooked, particularly as it moves toward them. Remember that the horse is a animal that is used to being being predated on. In other words, a predator runs at them, wolves, mountain lions, any of that. that runs at a horse, the horse assumes that he's going to be a victim, and his defense is running away. The secondary defense is him fighting, pawing and biting, and they will do some of that sometimes. But you just need to be careful about riders getting on saddles with no heel on their boot or whatever they have on their feet. Even barefooted is not a good idea, because the foot goes through the stirrup too easily and you can be hung up on the side of one. That's today's tip: is you don't put yourself in danger, you don't put horses in danger by having a foot where it can hang up, or tying something hard and fast to the saddle horn for them to drag. I had a neighbor in Colorado that they were breaking a young horse, and they wanted him to get used to Bradley things, and they hung a plastic sack on the saddle horn, and they killed their horse because he panicked. He ran away from them. They were in a round corral that was a 6-foot round corral. It was a big one, 6-foot tall fence. And he tried to jump out, trying to get away from that bag on his side. He hung the top of it and landed on his head and neck and broke his neck outside the corral. So just be cautious, be overly cautious sometimes. It's better to be quiet and reasonable than it is to have a wreck happen. And most wrecks are caused by us people not thinking. Have a wonderful day. Subscribe if you would.